What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here coming at y'all with another episode in our SEC in 30 days theme going on this month. We are joined by Florida football insider for The Athletic. We've had a few guests from The Athletic, some of my favorite people to talk to. Great site over there. We're joined by Allan Taylor today, talking all things Florida football. And I just want to say I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Well, happy to be here, brother.
Absolutely. So we got to start with last year. It was an exciting year for Florida. I mean, SEC East champions, SEC championship appearance, a really good game against Alabama, New Year's Six bowl appearance, 8-4, ranked in the top 10 pretty much all season. Did this season meet, exceed, or fall short of your preseason expectations?
Winning the East, I thought they would. I just thought Georgia had some quarterback troubles, and certainly Florida trumped Georgia with Kyle Trask. But once you get to 8-1, and you've got a chance to go into the SEC championship as a one-loss team, where perhaps playing Bama 52-46, might have even gotten them in the playoff. Who knows at that point? But then things unraveled at the end there. The LSU game got away, and then the Cotton Bowl was just a no-show for various reasons. So, 3-game losing streak taken into the offseason. It's hard to say that satisfied anybody at Florida when they were, really with A&M, LSU, and even Alabama just a couple plays away from being undefeated. So that ending certainly took some of the sugar off the top.
Right. And I mean, all year Florida football was in the news, and it was mostly due to the emergence of Kyle Pitts. He was probably him and Devontae Smith are the two most electric players in the entire country. What made him such a matchup nightmare, and what do you think his NFL potential is going to be?
I mean, his NFL potential as the highest drafted tight end in draft history is deserved. I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that he becomes a generational type of tight end. The guy who coached Antonio Gates at San Diego as an undrafted free agent is the guy who mentored Kyle Pitts here last year at Florida. And so that's a pretty good barometer, right? When you're talking about guys with sort of basketball bodies that really embrace football. So, I think if he gets with the right NFL coordinator who's not stuck in conventional ways of thinking and is okay letting him line up outside the number sometimes and creating mismatches and obviously staying healthy, I think the kid has just got a tremendous future. He's just 21. So his body's not even that old. He doesn't have a lot of mileage out of college because he didn't play a lot his freshman year. He's young overall, and he's hungry. And that's the thing, right? When these guys get a little money and go to the NFL, do they stay hungry? Do they want to improve? And I think he checks all the boxes.
Right. I mean, I was so impressed, especially every time I turned on the TV, it was like, it don't matter if you put a linebacker, a corner, a safety, you doubled them. I mean, Kyle Pitts was going to be open and he was going to catch the ball. But also, Dan Mullen, as the head coach, has been labeled as one of the best QB developers, spanning all the way back to Dak Prescott at Mississippi State. That didn't change with Kyle Trask, who was kind of thrust into the limelight last season. No one knew who this kid was, and he set the world on fire down the stretch. 4,200 yards, 43 touchdowns in a COVID-shortened season, no preseason workouts, anything like that. This is a two-parter, so we could take this one at a time. But the first question is, what makes Mullen one of the best offensive minds in the country? And then secondly, how was Trask able to even trump what he did at the end of last season?
Well, speaking of Mullen, I think he's not so ego-driven that his system has to work and he has to have guys to quote-unquote fit it. I mean, you look at some of the quarterbacks he ran out there at Mississippi State, their skill sets were all over the board. You look at what he's had at Florida, going from Felipe to Kyle, and even working in Emory Jones, he'll go where the talent takes him and he'll find a way to make that system work. Now, obviously with recruiting, you have certain presets, right? You have certain defaults that you want to go get, but the fact that he can make Dak work, that he can make Nick Fitzgerald work, that he can make Alex Smith work. If you go all the way back to Utah and Tim Tebow and Chris Leak, those guys aren't cookie cutter by any means. And he's found a way to maximize them. So I think in that respect, he'll take what you give him and do the most he can with it. And as far as Trask goes, definitely a plus arm, but not one of these, sit on one knee and throw it 80 yards to the uprights kind of guys. Not very mobile, although, surprisingly so, I guess, based on being 6'5". But man, his ability to process and to get the ball out quickly and go to the right spot, that's something that, there's a premium on, not only in college football, but certainly in the NFL. And that's why I think maybe people didn't get wowed by him on any certain plays. They just saw the numbers and kind of tapped him a system quarterback. But man, your system's your system. And if you got a quarterback who can run it, I'll take a system quarterback every day of the week. And so I think he's got a chance at the next level to, at worst, be one of these guys that is a backup for 8 to 10, 12 years. And if he gets the right opportunity, you might be sitting here and he's a 4, 5, 6, 7-year starter in the NFL because he sees things, he studies. He's never going to shortchange the ball club when it comes to being ready to play.
Right. I feel like it was so hard to kind of I feel like Kyle Trask, you can even look at someone like Kellen Mond, maybe Davis Mills. They kind of got swept away in the NFL draft process because of those top 5 quarterbacks. Everyone was like, it's these 5, and then there's everyone else. When I think Kyle Trask and Mond can both have really good careers. But, I want to kind of switch over to recruiting. I love talking recruiting, and what Florida does on the recruiting trail is amazing. Dan Mullen, one of the best recruiters in the country with his energy and everything. A top 12 class for this 2021 cycle, headlined by 5-star Jason Marshall. They also land multiple impact transfers. DeMarcus Bowman sticks out, former 5-star running back for Clemson, coming down to the Gators. What were the biggest positional needs, in your opinion, for this program? And who are some instant impact guys in this class that you can see being huge pieces to this 2021 run?
Well, you mentioned Marshall, and he's a guy that, can probably play day one if they needed him to do so. I think they've got enough at the cornerbacks, at least for the first half of the season, to where, they don't need him necessarily to line up day one. But he's tall, can run, takes it seriously, comes from a good program, actually has enough athleticism to play on the offensive side of the ball as well, which tells you a little bit. But he's the guy that that really I think stands out now and will stand out down the line. And somebody who I think has been overlooked is someone who they got sort of came down to them in Auburn, and that was Jeremiah Williams out of Birmingham. He's just now getting to campus, so you didn't hear much about him this spring. But, man, smart kid, could have gone to Duke, played well, played for a program that had won a state championship, I think, the year before he became a starter. Works his tail off. The coaches here say every time they would call him to touch base, he was at his job, or working out. So I think you've got a guy who might sort of fit that outside linebacker, edge rusher mold down the road. And then also Marshall's teammate down there at Miami Palmetto is a safety, Corey Collier. And depending on which recruiting services you look at, one's a 5-star here and one's a 5-star there, and the others are 4-stars in the others. But Collier's a guy who I'm not sure it's a year one guy necessarily, but man, he's going to bring some athleticism to the back end of that defense. And I think he's a safety that will, become a 2 or 3 year starter.
Absolutely. And, with Bowman, you also have Lorenzo Lingard, who transferred in last season, a former 5-star. We saw this past season, if there was a criticism for Dan Mullen's explosive offense, it was the lack of running ability at times. Like, there was times against A&M where if they could just have got a first down here or there, they really could have closed that game out. Same against LSU. What have you been kind of hearing from the running back room this spring? And do you think there's going to be a bigger emphasis on the run game this upcoming season? As we saw last year, that unit really struggled.
Yeah, a couple of issues. I think it was really offensive line related more than anything. They weren't a good power blocking unit. And to be honest, they were only slightly above average pass blocking. But, Trask got him in the right plays, and they had just such a good core receivers. Guys, Trayvon Grimes goes undrafted, and if you just seen him play against Alabama and against Georgia, you'd have thought he was a first-day pick maybe. So you had that mixture of Pitts, Grimes, to one extent Copeland, and obviously another first-rounder with Kadarius Toney. And it became easier, I think, for Mullen to say, look, let's pitch it out to Kadarius and get 7 or 8 versus let's try to, run into a brick wall behind an offensive line that's not clearing a lot of space and maybe pick up 3 or 4 yards. So that's why I think he went pass heavy last year and really the year before that. Their running backs are above average guys. I think they're all pretty good, but not great. And that's why the addition of Bowman from Clemson maybe gives them that home run threat they just didn't have because he's got another gear, right? I mean, you've got a mixture of guys there who are all returning, and Malik Davis, who's really good in the pass game, Damian Pierce, who's more of a north-south between the tackles guy, and then Naquan Wright, who's slippery, cutty, but really undersized. So I think when you throw Bowman in that mix, I would be surprised if he's not leading this team in rushing, by the middle to the late stages of next season. And then you put in Emory Jones as a quarterback, and you've got the expectation that the running game is not only going to be more featured, but that it's also going to be a lot more productive and consistent.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of where I wanted to shift to next. We mentioned Kyle Trask off to the NFL. Felipe Franks transferred the year before. So Emory Jones is going to have his chance as the number 1 guy for the Gators. We've seen a lot of hype behind Jones. There's NFL people who are saying he's going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick in this upcoming class. He could be one of the best quarterbacks coming out. For people who don't know, what makes Jones special and what are your expectations for him in 2021?
I don't know that there's a player with a higher upside or a lower floor, right? I mean, if you told me that he took that job, secured it, became a tremendous dual threat quarterback, and they felt great about him at the end of the year, I would be like, I believe you because I know how hard he works. If you told me Anthony Richardson was Florida's starting quarterback by week 5 because the Gators had maybe lost to Alabama and maybe had another loss and weren't really in the SEC East race anymore, I believe it. I know that there was, speculation that if they didn't name him the starter coming out of spring, that he was good enough to go somewhere else and start. And he may be even in the SEC. So you expected him as the older guy to be tabbed number 1. And Mullen sort of gave him the soft label as a starter. But then Mullen comes right back and says he's grooming 2 starters, throwing Richardson in. So I don't know that a lot of people here are rooting for Jones because, sort of Trask-like, he's sat for 3 years and had only a bit role, but he hasn't taken off. He hasn't jumped in the portal to go find the greener grass. And so now he gets a chance to start at the school he chose. And of course, as you remember, when Mullen came to Florida, his first job that December was flipping Jones from Ohio State. And who knows what the situation would have been had Emory wound up in Columbus. So, it's his time. He's got a chance. He's got 2 games against USF and FAU that aren't really high-profile games to settle into that starting quarterback job. So it's all there in front of him if he takes it, and I think he's going to give it a good go. But they're thrilled and with what they have behind him and Anthony Richardson as well, who's just a bigger version of Emory. Emory runs by guys, and Richardson runs over them. So.
I like it. And I mean, they also have a commitment for 2022. It's a kid I really like out of Flower Mound. Nick Evers is committed to Florida too. That kid is going to be a stud as well. I mean, he had like 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions last year. But I want to move more. There's always breakout players. I mean, Trask, I guess technically could have been because I mean he had a great year, but 40 something touchdowns is outrageous. And then Kyle Pitts exploding. Who are some players you're looking for 2021's team to kind of break out, shine, and have their breakout season?
Well, Copeland's a top 100 recruit, but he's been injured 1 year, and then he's been sort of in that mix with Grimes, Van Jefferson. I think, Florida sent 4 receivers to the NFL the year before. So he's sort of been in a mix there, and now it's his time as a 4th-year junior to really show what he can do. Xavier Henderson on the opposite side is the classic Florida outside receiver, 6'3", can run, is a matchup problem. He showed some flash last year when he was able to play. Another receiver that I'd look for that's a tremendous athlete is Trent Whittemore. He's like the team's dunk champion, he and Anthony Richardson. And so they like him outside. He's 6'4". I mean, he can play the slot, he can play outside. So they've got some pieces there, and on the line. It's tough to say, right? Because you got 2 or 3 guys coming back, but Josh Braun and Ethan White at the guards, I think, are going to give Florida a little more punch on the interior than maybe they had seen last year. And the whole defense is back, quite honestly, except for Marco Wilson and a couple of interior linemen. So you've got a lot of experience back there, but it's they're coming off a year where they took a lot of dings, right? I mean, it was not the typical Gator defense. So it's time for Brenton Cox to show that he's as good in the run game as he can be in the pass rushing game.
Absolutely. I mean, the kid has all the talent in the world. They also landed for interior D line, Daquan Newkirk out of Auburn, too, going to come down and be immediately eligible, has some experience playing in the SEC. But, Dan Mullen just signed a big extension for the Gators. And in this world of like coaching turmoil, I mean, even if you sign an extension, your job's not completely secure. Gus Malzahn fired 2 years after he signs a massive contract. What are like the expectations for Florida fans? I mean, for this year and the years coming forward, what does Mullen have to do for Florida fans to kind of be like, okay, I'm glad we gave him an extension, no hot seat talk? I mean, what is kind of the tone surrounding campus about Mullen right now as the guy for Florida?
Well, they want to get back to where they were when Mullen was the OC here, and they were winning SEC championships and chasing national titles as well. And I mean, that has to be the goal here. They got a new football facility that's going to open up end of next spring, but they're already selling that vision and showing it to recruits. And that'll help because I think in facilities they had fallen a little bit behind. But it's win the East, win the SEC every few years, and finally getting that college football playoff, which they haven't done. And really last year was the first year that there was serious talk about that, late into November before everything unraveled against LSU. So, people are satisfied. They understand that Mullen has stabilized things after what they went through with Muschamp and McElwain. But, 3 years of stability is fine. They want to start putting up banners and being in that conversation around New Year's Day. And so, they really don't have the personnel to match up with Alabama and Georgia week in and week out, but you only play them once a year. And last year, Florida wins by 2 touchdowns in Jacksonville and gave Alabama its best fight of the year from anybody. I mean, you would have thought that Florida game was a better national championship game than the Ohio State game turned out to be based on how it worked out. So, Mullen has this developmental plan down, and I think it's just a matter of trying to find really 1 or 2 more players in each class that are elite. I don't think they have to start over and then sort of reinvent the wheel. I think they're just take one guy off the back end and elevate one high 4, low 5-star guy on the top over the course of 2 or 3 classes, and I think those rosters start looking pretty similar.
Absolutely, yeah, they're right there, and I mean it's Florida and Georgia right now in the East. That's the standard over there. But looking ahead to the schedule, it's a tough schedule always. I mean, we've done all these conferences, but doing the SEC is so tough because everyone's schedule is tough. I mean, Florida, Bama coming into the Swamp week 3, their road trip to Baton Rouge later in the season, and then of course you have the Georgia game. You got a bye week in between the LSU Georgia game, which is lucky because playing those back to back would have been brutal. But what is your ceiling and or floor for this 2021 Florida team?
Well, I mean, you look at Bama coming in, and I think it's a good time for Florida to catch them because it will be Bama's first road game, even though they would have played Miami. But maybe Bryce Young isn't completely comfortable. Maybe all of his new receivers aren't completely in sync. And quite frankly, maybe a few of the offensive linemen aren't, don't have the chemistry that they'll have by the end of the year. So if Florida's got to play Alabama, week 3 at home is as good as it's going to get, right? But, they'll be an underdog in that game, I'm pretty sure. That game, Georgia and LSU on the road, to me, are ones that, if you look at it right now, you say those are probably losses. But as for the rest of them, I mean, to me, 9-3 would be your floor, right? And the only way you win the East is you're going to have to get 2 out of 3 of Alabama, Georgia, and LSU, because Georgia's crossover schedule with Auburn just isn't that tough. So I think this is actually a year that even if Georgia lost to Florida, they might be able to get to the SEC championship game as a one-loss team, whereas Florida might have two with LSU and Bama on the road. But I would say 9-3, 10-2 is a range for the regular season, unless Emory Jones turns out to be Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance nowadays. But yeah, I think that's a really, really good prediction. LSU is just kind of like that big question mark. It's either you're really high on them or you're like Coach O's on the hot seat. Like there's no in between for LSU right now. But you mentioned Week 3 Alabama. It helps that they're coming into Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, one of the most ridiculous environments to college football. I haven't been for a game. I've been in the stadium because I visited, because that was my number 2 school when I was an undergrad. I visited, got to go in the stadium. It looks amazing. I remember when Auburn played back in, I think it was 2019. That was I had some friends go, and they said it was the loudest stadium they've ever been to, and even on TV, it was like rocking. So, for the people who haven't been, what makes Gainesville, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, the Swamp, one of the most unique environments on game day?
It's one of those stadiums where it just feels like the noise stays inside. I mean, I don't know if the trajectory is more vertical or what, but with those orange walls and things ricocheting around, I was there for the first time in 2001 when Rex Grossman and that team thought they were going to be playing for the SEC championship and a national championship. And it was the 9/11 year where that Tennessee game got pushed back 8 or 9 weeks. And so they had to end the season with Tennessee, and Tennessee upset them for their chance to win the SEC title. And it was as loud as I've ever seen. The guy sitting next to me in the press box that day, we were using hand signals to communicate. I was like, we needed like a silent snap count. And now they've rebuilt the press box and modernized it in a lot of ways. So it's a cool stadium. Last year was my first year on this beat. We didn't get anywhere near the flavor, obviously, with 15, 16,000 people in that play. So I'm hungry as heck to get it filled up again. Really, the only taste of crowds we got was when Florida went to A&M, and I think they probably put 40 or 45,000 in that stadium, and it was rocking a little bit. So everybody's going to be juiced. The first game against FAU is at night, but that Week 3 game against Bama, assuming Florida is 2-0 at that point, it's going to be eardrum bursting.
It definitely is. This one, like you said, I think Florida and LSU with like the orange and the yellow, it just makes it so much more intimidating. I don't know what it is, but it works. It's a beautiful stadium. I like the city. We spent like a weekend down there. I love the campus down there. So I need to get down there for a game ASAP. But I appreciate you coming on the show, man, talking Florida football with me. But where can our listeners find you? Plug social media, The Athletic, anything like that. This is your time. So
yeah, just at G Allan Taylor on Twitter, and The Athletic. Lucky to be aboard there. I've been with them for 2 years. My last year covering West Virginia, and then now finally back in the SEC where I grew up. We're like at 1.2 million subscribers, so it's really booming. And the thing I like about it is, I grew up watching the Saints and watching Braves baseball and watching SEC football, and I can get it all there. So it's one of those few places that you don't have to subscribe to 4 papers at once. So aboard, man.
I love it, guys. I tell you every time. I think you're like our probably almost 10th guest from The Athletic since we've been doing this. That's like the first site I go to. I'm like, does this team have an Athletic beat reporter? So I appreciate you coming on, guys. Make sure to subscribe to The Athletic. You already know where to find us. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can find us on any and all podcast streaming platforms. This is our 3rd episode of our SEC in 30 days. We continue it later this week with Missouri, so make sure to tune into that as well. But for Allan, for myself, for the Bluebloods, guys, we are out for right now.